Welcome back, Filmaholics. My name is Kyle Kendrick, and in this channel you find anything and everything filmmaking. So today I give my thoughts on the new camera that got released recently called the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K Pro. That is a mouthful, but we're gonna be talking about it. So I'm gonna cut this video into threes. The main thing I'm gonna talk about first is price, the second thing is gonna be the specs, and the last thing is who I think this camera is for and what kind of camera it is. Like I mentioned before, the first thing I want to talk about this camera is going to be the price point, and that's going to be $2,495. That's $100 less than the camera I'm using right now, which is the Sony a7S III. And that's a 6K camera for $1,000 less. That's insanely good. I wish I had it. I wish I had the means to use it, but I'll talk more about that later and why I'm still using the Sony a7S III. But before that, let's go ahead and talk about the specs of this 6K amazing camera. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is going to be the sensor, and that's how it's a Super 35 sensor with 21.2 megapixels and 6K resolution and 13 stops of dynamic range. That is so beautiful just to talk about in the beginning of the spec line. I absolutely love that. Oh my god, it's so good. But let's go ahead and continue. And now we're gonna talk about the frame rates that this camera can do. In 4K, it can do up to 30 frames per second, 5K, it can do 60 frames, and same with 6K. But if you use ProRes 422 and you record externally, it can go up to 120 frames per second. Speaking about that, it also can record externally at 10-bit 422, which is again amazing for color grade. So great low light, great color grade. You can film at any time. Speaking about that, the mounting system in it is also an EF mount, which means it's a Canon lens camera, which is beautiful because Canon has beautiful glass. It has just some of the best lenses in the business. So the fact that you can put that on your camera, or you can adapt it to use a PL mount or anything else, is gonna be amazing. You're gonna have a great rig if you use that. So it has all these things, and then it decides to add ND filters internally. So you can have 2 stops increments. So there's 2 stops, 4 stops, and then 6 stops of just NDs in there. And that just opens up so much. You can film any time of the day and you won't have to worry about it because you have internal NDs. You don't have to put a filter over your lens or anything. You could just use just the lens and the camera. That just minimizes so much for run and gun situations outdoors, and you don't have the time to be able to film in the time you want. Oh my god, that's just beautiful. I keep saying it is, but it is. And the last thing I want to talk about is going to be the body. So the body is a tilting screen, and that means it's not going to be the best in vlogging situations, but that's not what this camera is kind of built for. I'll talk about that a little bit later. It also uses a Sony L series battery, which lasts pretty long, but I would still use an external monitor. And then it also has this optional EVF, kind of like how in Sony cameras you can put like something in a hot shoe mount and then it replaces the top with like a mic or something like that. In this one, it does that, but with an EVF, which I love that. Thanks to Philip Bloom, he suggested using it, and I just absolutely love it. It's actually a really fun way to film and a fun way to take pictures. I didn't realize that because I'm this young and I just always use monitors. So there's that. And then to top that whole thing off, it's gonna be carbon fibered body. That I always thought that they should do that, and they finally did, and that is so cool. Carbon fiber is so durable and so light, which means a gimbal can hold that and a big lens, and it's gonna be so easy to do. That's so cool. Now let's talk about inputs. So for the visual input, it has HDMI and also Type-C, and then for the audio input, it has 2 mini XLR inputs and then a input for a 3.5 stereo cord and then an output of that same one. And that's for headphones mainly, but again, I'd most likely use that externally. And that's it for the specs. So we know what's on paper about this camera, but let's talk about who is this camera for. Well, I think that this camera, with how much you can put into it and mod it basically to be able to have a giant rig around this camera with the power output, with the audio output and the visual output, and how much you can just rig this camera to hell, I still consider it a multimedia camera, but it's definitely not made for content. You can definitely use it for content creation, but it feels like with how much you need to run this camera in its full potential, it's gonna require a crew. Most of the time anyway. Speaking about having a crew, if you have like a team or a group of people that film with you and want to create content, so you end up splitting this camera like maybe 3-4 different ways for whoever is helping you film, then it's gonna make the value of this camera amazing. If you split this camera by 4 or 3, that's like less than 1,000 each, and that's gonna be amazing because of how much you guys are gonna be able to do. But if you are one person, that's where it changes. And that's because if you're mainly gonna be making content and you're not gonna be filming like short films or anything like advertisements or anything like that, or you just don't have a lot of control over the set, or you don't have a lot of people to help you, then I don't think this would be the best choice. It can still be a choice, and it's gonna be a great learning curve for how much you're gonna learn to do almost every job in the whole industry. But in the same time, it's gonna be stressful as well. And that's why I still choose the Sony a7S III, since I'm gonna be a solo filmmaker for now. But I eventually do want to get a cinema camera where I can rig it out and have help from other people to film with me, and it's gonna be a lot more convenient for me for something like this. But right now the convenience is something more like the Sony a7S III, where it has autofocus, it has basically everything done and just reliable for just one person to use. Somebody like me where it's just run and gun. But again, if you have a crew, if you have the potential to be able to have a team with you and have a lot of control over the set, then honestly this camera can't be beat in its value. 6K footage, oh my god. And if you guys want to hear more about the latest film gear that's getting released, go ahead and check out this playlist right up here. Also, if you guys want to check out the camera we just finished talking about, that's going to be the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K, not 4K, 6K Pro. That's going to be in the description down below among the gear I use. It's going to be no extra cost to you guys, but it's going to help out the channel here and there if you guys end up purchasing. So there's that. And lastly, don't forget to like and subscribe. And also, just something that I said in my last video, I'm not gonna be saying dream on for the next few videos due to the fact that the world is the way it is right now. So instead I'm gonna be saying #StopAsianHate.